Welcome to the Knife Junkie podcast, your weekly dose of knife news and information about knives and knife collecting. Here's your host, Bob the Knife Junkie DeMarco.
Welcome to the Knife Junkie podcast. I'm Bob DeMarco. On this edition of the show, I'm speaking with Jess Hoffman of Hoffman Knives. Jess hails from Northeast Wisconsin, where he has transformed his hobby into a part-time career, making heirloom quality knives from scratch for the outdoor enthusiast. His first knives were made with a file and a lot of elbow grease, but today he's got a fully fledged shop and a much broader buying public, with his fixed blade knives just selling out at Knives Ship Free. We'll meet Jess and find out all about how he turned his hobby and evolved it into something greater. But first, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and download the show to your favorite podcast app. You see, that way you can listen on the go. And if you want to help support the show, quickest way to do that is to head on over to Patreon. You can go to TheKnifeJunkie.com/Patreon and check out what we have to offer, or you can scan the QR code on your screen. Again, that's TheKnifeJunkie.com/Patreon.
The Shockwave Tactical Torch is your ultimate self-defense companion, featuring a powerful LED bulb that lasts 100,000 hours, a super sharp crenulated bezel, and a built-in stun gun delivering 4.5 million volts. Don't settle for ordinary. Choose the Shockwave Tactical Torch. TheKnifeJunkie.com/Shockwave.
Jess, welcome to the Knife Junkie podcast, sir.
Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure, and I want to congratulate you. As I mentioned up front, you just had a big run of knives at Knives Ship Free, and the second time I looked, there were like 2 knives left, and now it's all sold out. So congratulations, sir.
Excellent.
Yeah. So that's a heck of an accomplishment.
Yeah, I've been working with Jay since the beginning or the end of last year, over at Knives Ship Free, and he's a great guy to work with, and it's been a beneficial partnership.
How does one get involved? We're going to talk all about your knife making and your career and all that, but
Sure.
Just since we're talking about Knives Ship Free right now, how do knife makers get involved with retailers like that? How does that work?
There's only been a couple of dealers that I've dealt with. I'll only deal with one dealer at a time. And both times it was me approaching them.
Okay.
They did show some interest at first, but the final deal was me approaching them and asking whether or not they'd be interested. So,
okay, because I've gotten a little bit of a view of it from a blade show where you see there are knife makers, obviously there are retailers, and I see that a lot of meetings happen, and there's a lot of, and then there's Arizona Custom Knives that comes through and
Yep.
kind of cleans up and takes everything else, which I think is great too. But it seems like it's like a slightly less complicated version of how a filmmaker gets distribution for a movie.
well, I wouldn't know anything about that. So, but yeah, I do have a couple on Arizona, and one of the reasons I put some knives up on Arizona is a lot of times when you search a knife maker, that is one of the first returns that'll show up in a search engine. And Arizona they've cataloged every knife they've ever sold pretty much, and you can go back in there and look at stuff that's sold 10 years ago, and that's just a really cool thing for knife makers or enthusiasts to be able to do.
I agree 100%. I love Arizona Custom Knives. I don't think I'm positive I've never gotten anything from them, but they are an endless font for research, or at least for getting the tip of the iceberg. And then you can just see, like you said, everything they've ever sold. You can just go back page after page after page. And I do love that about them. So let's talk about your knife making. I read on your website, and we've talked a little bit before this recording, and you mentioned how you made your first knives with files. And we're not talking about the file wasn't the blade stock. The file was the tool you used to actually get the knife to make the knife. Tell me what that's like. That's got to be intense.
Yeah, it is. It was lots of time down in my basement with I took a piece of 1084 and I'd cut it out with a hacksaw and a um, just like a 4.5 inch disc grinder, kind of ground it to shape, and actually took wood screws and screwed it to a 2x4 and stuck the 2x4 into a vise and just started filing away on it. And yeah, that's how I made my first knife. I still have that one.
So how did you manage to, assuming that you made even-ish bevels? I'm sure they're nothing like what you're making now, but how did you ensure that with a file you're able to get even bevels? Because I imagine you're doing this, and there's some amount of rock. I'm exaggerating here, but there must be some amount of rocking between the two hands and then the fulcrum there with the file. How did you make it so that it was a decent knife?
Sure. So the easiest way to remove a lot of material from steel is not the conventional way of filing. It's actually, if you take the handle in one hand and the tip of the file in the other, and you draw it back and forth, and actually push the file and draw the file, and you'll end up getting a lot flatter bevel. My first one still wasn't a flat bevel, but it turned out it was a usable knife. I used it in the kitchen for quite a while, for quite a few years, and before I finally just retired it and put it on my shelf.
I went to the museum.
Yeah.
So how many knives did you make that way before you started?
Just the one.
Oh, okay.
Just the one, and I knew that it was something that I was interested in and something I wanted to continue to do. But I knew I didn't want to do it that way anymore. So yeah, I ordered a grinder right away, pretty much.
Now, would you say that okay, you're moving on to grinder, bigger tools, different kind of process, but would you say you learned anything from the slowness of that file process?
Yeah, for me it was really relaxing, and there are still parts of knife making that are very relaxing for me, and generally it's the grinding bevels. That's something that I still enjoy doing, which was what I was doing with the filing. But yeah, it's almost a relaxing thing to do.
So, well, actually, why in the first place knives? Are you a handy guy? Have you always been a maker of stuff? And why knives?
No, I haven't been really. In high school, I took some shop classes, wood shop, and I was good at wood shop. I enjoyed it, but it sucks when you leave the high school wood shop and you want to go, work on your own projects, and you don't have the big Powermatic planer and the big 12-inch table saw and the 36-inch band saw. It kind of sucks when you don't have the big tools to do the job. So I got away from that right after high school. The one thing I really liked about making knives was that it's really an endless learning curve. You're working with, you're doing metal work, you're doing wood work, you're doing, if you get into the fancier stuff, you're going to get into jewelry and stone setting sometimes, or just different techniques that jewelers use. You get into the scientific side, the metallurgy. There's just so much to learn in this craft, and there's really there's no end in sight as far as what you can do to a knife to embellish it or to make it better or different.
The thing to me that seems the most rewarding, just in talking to many people like yourself, knife makers, is that when you're done with the process, which is I mean, I've made a couple of knives, but certainly can't call myself a knife maker. But at the end of that process, that involved process, you've got a tool. It's like you're going through this long drawn out process to get to the end. And the end is just the beginning for that thing, because it's a tool, and it will go on for many, many years and do work. What's it like knowing that you're making something that's actually useful and not just something that gets hung on a wall?
That's what I like. And I always say that I don't make safe queens. I don't make knives that I don't want somebody to buy one of my knives and just put it on a shelf and look at it and never use it. I want somebody to carry that knife, and I want it to be a tool that performs for them and looks good doing it. But that to me is the biggest compliment, is when somebody's actually using the knife, because anybody can make a knife shaped object, and but to actually make something that performs well, that's an extra step or an extra level.
So what to you is the most critical part of the process? I hear people say, people are fond of saying the heat treat is the soul of the blade, and I like that. It sounds very dramatic, but in earnest, what do you think is the most important consideration when you're making a knife?
And I'm going to say that the heat treat is important, because if you don't have it, but another thing too that's really important is the geometry of the bevels. And you'll notice most of my blades are full flat grinds or full hollow grinds. They're the bevels go all the way up to the spine, and that's just because that lesser angle cuts better. It just performs better, as opposed to a more steep angle, or not a less than full flat grind, I guess.
Right. And there seems to be some robustness to that kind of grind also. The full flat is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
So Jim is scrolling through your pages right now, and I'm noticing the theme of not completely straight across the board, but a lot of these knives are named after counties in Ireland. What is that theme about?
So that is that's kind of my paying homage to my mother's side of the family. My grandfather was 100% Irish. My grandmother, I believe, was 75% Irish. She died when my mom was really young. So I wanted to pay homage to the Irish side of my family, and I looked, and the Irish county names sounded pretty cool. Most of them did. There's some of them that I have no idea how to pronounce, so I'm not naming knives after that. There's a county Mayo. Obviously Tom Mayo is a very accomplished knife maker. I'm not going to make a J. Hoffman knife Mayo model, because that'd just be
Asking for
that
trouble.
would be very dumb of me. So yeah, so there's some of them that I don't use, and I've kind of gotten away from using the Irish names, just because I've run out of ones that are easy to say,
Okay.
or easy to spell. So
some family inspiration in that, some tribute to your family, your mom's side of the family. What about the inspiration for the designs themselves? What are you thinking of? What inspires you in terms of their designs, and what are you hoping these kind of your knives are able to accomplish?
So I want them all to be useful, and I want them to be comfortable. And so many knives, they just have a blocky handle, and quite honestly, people don't generally hold a knife like that.
Right.
I don't, and maybe I'm odd, but I don't. So most of my knives, I design them to be used with a three finger grip, kind of with the forefinger up front, and this gives you a lot of control. And usually the back of my spine is curved and rounded down, kind of fits into your hand really well, gives you a good grip. A lot of them you can still use them with a full grip. They're still comfortable that way, but that's just, it's not the way I use a knife. And I know there's a lot of people that don't use a knife that way. So the ergonomic shape of the handle, I think, for me is important. We're getting mosquitoes in Wisconsin.
Oh
And,
man, lucky you.
yeah, lucky me. They've been coming into the shop today. So
I remember driving through Wisconsin, Minnesota, and maybe the Dakotas when I was real little with my family. And I remember you could saddle and ride the mosquitoes there. They were so friendly, we can say.
yeah, friendly. Yeah, yeah. They're not big, but around here they're not big. But it's just pure numbers of them. There's lots of them. So I try to keep the shop closed up, but today was a beautiful day, so I had all the windows and door open and stuff, and shouldn't have done that.
So let's talk about, well, first of all, I really like what you're talking about in terms of the purposeful ergonomics of them and how most people actually use knives. And you have to know what the knives are going to be used for. If they're hunting knives, they're probably going to be held in a certain way, and the fact that you make them comfortable to grip in a sort of standard saber grip, but recognizing that most likely these knives are going to be used most often with three fingers on the handle and then a forefinger up on the blade to guide it through whatever the job is. I think that's cool because it's very purposeful. And when you do that, when designs follow the purpose, they tend to be beautiful to me. And they work, they tend to work well. So let's now go through your process. We know you're not using files now. We know you have a beautiful shop around you. What's your process like?
So I start with bars of steel or sheets of steel. And I use a lot of AEBL. I do use some 5100 for high carbon. I do use some magnet cut, but I order all new steel. I never use repurposed or saw blades or anything like that. And I've got templates for all of my models, and I spray dike them on the bars of steel and trace out my shape. I cut them out with a bandsaw and grind them to shape. There's a couple of my models that I have water jetted just because I make so many of them that it makes sense for me to have them water jetted. But 90% of the knives that I make are all ground to shape by me. After that, I drill my holes for my handles, my Corby bolts,
Mm-hmm.
and then they go into heat treat. When I first started and I had a grinder, I was grinding post heat treat.
Okay.
And pre-heat treat. I would grind the bevels and everything, and then I would heat treat it. And I found my process was a lot better, heat treating first and then grinding my bevels. So
why is that? Because to me, and I'll tell you, the reason I ask is it seems like it would be easier to do before the heat treat, but then I know that also introduces the possibility of warpage and stuff. So I'm always kind of interested to find out when people do grind.
So the warpage is a big issue, and when I first started, that was one of the main reasons, because my grinds weren't quite even on each side, so that just helped the warpage warp even more. So the other issue that you run into is these are plate quenched, so when they come out of the kiln, they get placed between two aluminum plates to cool them quickly. And the issue that you have is when you put them between the plates, this whole section right here is not touching the plate. Anywhere where you ground a bevel, that's not going to touch the plate. It's not going to cool as quickly, and it's not going to heat treat as it's still going to get hard. It's not going to be the same as the rest of the blade though, and the handle area or the tang. So that was another big reason for me. And quite honestly, with the grinders and the abrasives that we have nowadays, it really doesn't matter. The whole thing with grinding after heat treat is to make sure that you don't burn it and take the temper out of it. If you change the color of the steel, it's pretty much junk at that point. And I've gotten into the rhythm when I'm grinding that I've always got a bucket of water right next to me. I take a pass on the grinder, it goes in the water. I take a pass on the grinder, it goes in the water. And I'm just constantly keeping it cool and preventing any loss of temper by grinding too hard or too fast.
I hadn't heard that explanation of when you're using the aluminum plates to quench that you want the most surface area of that blade or that blank essentially to be touching as much of that aluminum as possible to conduct the heat away from it. And if you have bevels there, those aren't touching, and it's going to take them. It's going to take that longer to cool down, and that I'm sure that jacks up the whole heat treat. That's my technical term, jacks it up. But
yes, correct. Yeah, that's there. Well, Laren Thomas wouldn't go with that answer, but yeah, it jacks it up.
So once you have it out, then you get to what the handle and the bevels.
Yep. So after I quench them, all of my stainless blades go into liquid nitrogen, and they get a cryo, and then they go into the tempering. And then it's after grinding the bevels, it's picking out handles. I've got these tackle boxes that I use, and I've actually got one blade in here. And I'll fill up the tackle box. The blade goes in the one slot. There's a piece of paper that is going to have all of the blade information as far as what steel it is, who the customer is, and then what handle is going on. And it helps me keep track of what knives are where. And for me, picking out handles is I have I kind of collect handle material. So it's kind of like going to a restaurant that has like a 6-page menu, and you're trying to find, what you want for dinner, and there's too many choices.
Yeah.
As opposed to going to the hot dog stand, you're getting a hot dog.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have that issue, and there's times I'll spend 20 minutes to a half an hour with a blade in my hand, just matching up different pieces of wood or handle material or something like that, just to try to figure out what's going to look cool with which blade.
Well, what's your favorite handle material, and is it your favorite material to work with?
I like old micarta, and I'm not even going to say Westinghouse because I've gotten some vintage current micarta that's I think just as nice as old Westinghouse. I love that stuff. I think it looks really cool, and it patinas really nice. I also like Rich Light a lot.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of cool because you can get different. There's a lot of different colors, and they've got different layered colors, and there's a lot you can do with that. But I'm fortunate that my neighbor is a timber buyer, and loggers hate burls, but he throws them on his log truck and drops them off in my yard when he gets enough of them. And so I've got quite a bit of wood drying that I send off to K&G for stabilizing. So I do some wood. I do some. There really isn't a handle material that I won't that I won't use. I know some people refuse to use carbon fiber or whatever. There really isn't anything that that I refuse to use, I guess.
That's amazing that you have a neighbor who drops off wood burl for you, because I could see why a logger would hate it, but man, knife makers and craftsmen love burl, and
Oh yeah.
see why. I don't think I have any knives in my collection. I don't have too much wood, too many wood handled knives in my collection. I would like to, but no burl, and I just find it so beautiful.
Okay. Yeah. It's amazing what you'll cut into sometimes, and when you look at burls on the outside, it's the ugly part of the tree.
Yeah.
But when you cut them open, they're amazing. Sometimes it's incredible.
So, do you make all these knives in batches? I mean, I know I saw from your tackle box that some stuff is custom, but do you make big batches, or how does that work?
So I usually work in batches of 5 or 6. I'll do my heat treat. I'll do well, I just heat treated last week, and I think I did 50 blades. So I'll heat treat a whole bunch of blades and then just store them in the drawer. So if I need them or a customer wants one, I can quick grab one and it's ready to grind and ready to put a handle on. So I kind of keep a stock of heat treated blades, but I generally work in batches of 4 or 5 of the same model, and it just it seems to work well that way.
And each one, you touch each one of them, so just by that very nature, each one is slightly unique. But let's take a look at some of your knives. We've been talking a lot about them. Let's see what.
Okay. So this is one of my more popular models, and this is the Donegal. And
oh yeah, that is cool.
It is what I kind of consider a cross between a Canadian belt knife and a Nessmuck. It just the kind of the swoopy curve of the back, the spine gives me that idea of the Canadian belt knife. It's obviously a taller blade than the Canadian belt knife, but it's got the full flat grind. And this one's shredded carbon fiber with red and black G10 liners. Knives usually all come with leather sheaths or Kydex sheaths. Just started using the pocket clips, the discreet carry pocket clips. I love these.
I love those too. Those are my favorite.
I do all the sheaths myself. The only thing I don't do in-house is I don't do my own stabilizing for wood.
Okay.
I can't do it better than K&G does it. So why bother and waste time?
Potentially waste a piece of wood. Wait, don't put that one back yet.
Okay.
I want to make a comment.
Sure.
Something I really like about this, and something you mentioned before, is that you'll work with all sorts of handle materials. Now, I look at the blade and the profile of this whole knife, and it looks to me, it definitely reminds me of a Nessmuck, and I like your referencing the Canadian belt knife, which are both kind of traditional outdoorsman's knives. But you have this super, for lack of a better term, space age carbon fiber handle on it, and it goes beautifully. It looks beautiful with that blade, but it's also kind of a contrast, and I really like that.
Okay, thank you. It's it's a classic. I guess to me, carbon fiber it's a space age material, but to me, just the blackness of it is just kind of a classic. 50 years from now, carbon fiber is still going to look cool, and I said before that there's handle materials that there isn't a handle material I won't use, and that's a lie. Actually, I don't use hybrids. I don't use the combination of burl that's poured with a resin. Um, so yeah, those I don't work with. And I don't want to work with something that's going to look like the um, olive refrigerator, that your grandma had in her house. You know,
Yeah.
in the 70s when she bought that thing was high class, and
Yeah.
now you look at it going, oh my God, that thing is ugly.
Yeah.
I don't want any of my knives in 50 years for somebody to go, oh my God, what was he thinking when he put those colors together? But
so to you, those burls that have voids and they're filled in with colored resins and stuff, is that just ugly to you, or you don't like the plasticiness of it?
no, because I'm not afraid of plastic. I will use some. I use some Juma and I use some Kieranite. I like the Juma better than the Kieranite, but so I'm not afraid of that. One of my fears is that's a fairly new process, and I'm really uncomfortable with the plastic portion that is never going to change shape. It's never going to shrink. It's never going to expand. And the burl, which even if it's stabilized, they still expand a little bit. They still shrink. I'm more concerned about the durability of that handle
Yeah.
than the aesthetics of it. They look really cool. I'm not going to disagree that there are some of them that contrast between the bright blue, plastic and a piece of cherry burl or whatever it is. That looks cool, but I'm very leery about the durability of it, I guess. And until I see one of those in 50 years that looks the same as it did, when it was created, I'm not real comfortable using that handle material, I guess.
Yeah, I never thought of that. That makes a lot of sense because you've got something that is so synthetic and something that is so natural. They're going to react differently, and you don't know
Right.
how they're going to interact.
And there's ones out there that have, they've been out there for 10 or 12 years on a knife and no issues. So my thinking is maybe completely off base, but once I get something stuck in my head, I can't get it out. So it's there.
I hear that. So let's take a look at a couple of other models.
Sure. So that was my Donegal, and a lot of my models, I make them in different sizes. So the Donegal that I showed you, that's the full size. I also make an 85% and a 70%, which 70% makes a nice little neck knife. This is a new model for me just this year, and this is a Winton. And what I was setting out to do with this was I'm not a hunter, so I'm kind of at a disadvantage when people come to me in the fall and they're looking for a hunting knife for their son or for their dad or whatever, and they're looking for that perfect hunting knife. And I always say, well, bring me the one that they have so we can kind of know what they're used to. And what I'm finding, or what I was finding, is that they were all bringing me knives that were a lot bigger than what I make. And what my hunting friends tell me that a smaller knife like this is plenty big enough for gutting a deer, and they're happy to use that. But there's a lot of hunters out there that do want a larger knife. So I actually set out to make a couple of different designs that are more of a full size hunting knife. Still has the ergonomic curve on the back. I can, I've got a full grip on it, but I can also choke up on it and do more intricate cutting with it. And it's real comfortable back in the hand, and it gives you a really nice grip with that. This one is a full flat grind, but And the one that I just pulled out of the box, the box that I showed you earlier. So this is another one, but it's it's a hollow grind. It's a 20-inch wheel hollow grind, and I've actually found that I kind of like the hollow ground version a little better. But I'll make them either way, no matter, if somebody wants a specific one. But and go ahead. I'm sorry.
What is it that you like about the hollow grind better?
I like the way that when you move it in the light, it reflects light differently. And my hollow grinds, I've got a 20-inch wheel, which is fairly uncommon. There's only two grinder companies in the world that make a 20-inch wheel. So back to this one, it just kind of reflects the light differently when you move it, but it almost looks like a flat grind.
Yeah.
Just because it's such a shallow hollow grind. And I guess I like that. It's just kind of an aesthetics thing for me. They're probably going to perform about the same.
Do you think that in cross section with those concave surfaces coming together, do you think that it gives you more sharpening life as you say you're using that knife for years and years and you sharpen it over and over as you go up? It seems like you might have more real estate behind the edge that remains thin if it's a hollow grind.
Yes, I know what you're saying, and I think that does make sense. But if you're sharpening enough that you're changing the thickness behind the edge, either your knife has a really bad heat treat and or you're one of the people that has taken it to a bench grinder to try to sharpen it.
That's a fair point.
Yeah, for me, sharpening is you shouldn't be taking much material off. But I guess after how many years, I guess we'll see how mine have held up with sharpening over the years. I always tell all my customers I sharpen my knives for a lifetime. You just got to get it back to me, and I'll put a new edge on it and get it and send it back to you. So that's always an option. But
well, how do you come up with new models? I know you have a couple of newish models. I think the Phantom is new, isn't it?
Yep, that was new last year, or late 23. I think I came out with the Phantom, and yeah. So I've got a. Let me grab one of my patterns here quick.
Sure. Oh, I always like the reveal of the shop behind you. It looks cool.
Oh. Okay, so these are some of the templates that I use, but what I started with on this was this arc right here, which gives me my my 3-finger grip. And this model is the Oni, and it's got a kind of a bulbous front. And then I came up with the cork, which is the exact same knife. It's just got a more of a leaf blade to it. Then I have the Tipperary, which is again the exact same knife, but it's a Warncliffe. And then finally the Phantom, which is
that's
again
cool.
the same knife, but it's got the hawkbill blade to it. So all 4 of these knives are essentially the same with just a different edge. So when I come up with a new design, a lot of times I always try to have that dropped back so that it fits nicely in your hand, doesn't poke into the palm of your hand, and you've got a good grip and a lot of control over that blade. So that's kind of how it is. Everything is I shouldn't say everything. There's been times where I've just taken a bar of steel and taken it to the grinder and just started grinding and shaping and kind of playing with stuff that way. And I'm trying to think of what knife I made. Just one of my models I made completely accidental because I was grinding something else and it was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And
That's cool.
played around with it a little bit and came up with something totally different. So
It's like you were sketching with steel.
yeah, kind of. But mostly what I do is I sketch on paper and kind of do it that way. And I'll make a couple of different sketches and I'll make a couple of different templates just to feel them and see how they work and how they feel.
Do you have, I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the original that has the real deep belly. I know I saw a bunch of those on Knives Ship Free.
Yeah, the Oni.
The Oni, yeah.
Yep.
Do you have a finished copy of that, one of those? Sold them all, huh?
I don't know if I do or not. Let me take a look here.
That is always a good problem to have. Oftentimes I'll ask people here if they have, X, Y, or Z knife, and they're like, no, I make it and I sell it as fast as I can. You don't walk around with your paycheck in your pocket, do you? And
no, I don't have one. I've got one in my office, but
okay.
yeah, I don't have one out here in the shop.
That knife, when I was first discovering your work, that one really stood out to me. I'm a big fan of that sort of blade shape. It's sort of a real big belly, and I like the overall. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. I love that overall arc to the back of the handle. And I look at something like this, and I've never held one or cut with one, but A, I can tell it's going to feel good in the hand. And B, I just know it's going to be an incredible cutter because you have this downward angle from the handle to the blade. And I mentioned that a lot on this show and in my videos. Just I love when you have a blade that angles down from the handle. A kukri is a very extreme version of that.
Sure.
Or some of these Filipino swords behind me have that extreme angle thing. But to me, it really just means it's going to be a very, very efficient cutter. Do you have any preference yourself personally? Because you took that knife, you reduced it, and then you flattened it for the Wharncliffe, and then you made it concave convex for the concave for the hawkbill. So you've got 4 different blades in that. Do you have a kind of blade that you prefer?
The knives that I carry are mistakes.
Okay.
So the ones that I screw up, those are the ones that I generally carry. I did carry an Oni for a while. I loved it, and realized after about a week that I had screwed up the heat treat and it wouldn't hold an edge. And actually found out I had screwed up about 6 blades out of the batch, which none of them had left the shop yet. So, yeah, I was happy about that. But yeah, it's they all got junked, which.
Oh, I was going to ask you, is there any way to fix it?
No, not really. I could cut the handles off and reheat treat it, and it's not worth it. It's just you're better off starting with a new hunk of steel. And the one turned out really nice. It was it was one of my Claire's.
Oh.
And I did send that one off to have photographed, professionally photographed, even though it's not a good knife. It looked really nice. So yeah, if anybody asks if that one ever shows up in a magazine and somebody wants to know if it's available, no, it's not available. I still have it, but no, it's not available. So
Well, so tell me about your business a little bit and how I know that this started as a hobby and now it's much more than that. How do you approach it from a business standpoint? Like, what's your model?
Uh, this is my hobby. I don't have a boat. I don't have a camper. I sold my motorcycle. This is what I do for fun. It's what I enjoy. So if I can make a little bit of money, I'm looking to retire from my real job in about 3.5, 4 years. And if I can supplement my retirement with making knives and hopefully go to more shows. I'm kind of pushing myself on the number of shows that I'm doing next year, but I think it's good and getting me ready for when I do retire. So um, I do. I'm trying to think here. Right now, I am at. Well, let me go into my spreadsheet here real quick. I hope I didn't just screw something up.
No,
Um,
still there.
so I just put number 75 for the year
Oh,
in
okay.
my books. I keep all my knives are serial numbered, but there's no serial number on the knife.
Okay.
Um, I serial number them from my record, and if the knife ever comes back, there's enough information in my records that I know which serial number it is and who originally bought it and all of that. Um, but last year I think I did 140 knives, and I'll definitely be on pace for doing about that this year also.
So as a man with another job,
Mhm.
and this has always been my, I've always had a job and I've always been creative and have my creative outlets, and there's always this nagging feeling like, oh man, what it would really take to be at the top of my creative game with my outside of work pursuit would be to like, and I can't do this, I'm a family man, but would be like to leave my job completely and immerse myself 100%, and then I would just like rise out of the ashes as this amazing. Do you ever have that tension between your hobby, which obviously you've gotten really good at, but with creative things, we always want more. We always want to get better. Is there a
Mhm.
tension between that and what you have to do?
No, not so much.
Good.
So many of the makers that I talk to nowadays, they are their goal is to become a full-time knife maker. And my goal is to not become a full-time knife maker. I'm just the opposite. I don't want to depend on my hobby to put food on the table and pay the mortgage and the car bill and all of that. I want it to continue to be a hobby. So when I retire, it'll supplement my income. It'll be, I'll be able to do my hobby and make a little extra money at it. So um, as far as enhancing, I guess I just took I went to my local tech college this year and took some machining course,
Cool.
just to learn how to use mills and lathes and all of that stuff. I had a general idea of it, but I never had any formal training in it. It's kind of weird because I'm about 15 years older than the instructor. But and yeah, there's classes full of 19-year-old kids that show up late for class and are hungover and all of that. It's like I'm the old guy, but that's okay. So I'm learning there, and I one of my first mentors was Peter Martin. Peter Martin's a Peter Martin can make anything when it comes to knives, but he mostly makes folders, and he's been after me to make folders for I don't know how long, and it just was something that didn't intrigue me. I guess I've always carried a fixed blade. Even before I started making knives, I always carried fixed blades. So that's kind of what I liked. But after Blade Show, which right now I'm in full Blade Show rush trying to get ready, I am going to go visit my friend Ken Coates, and he's going to walk me through making a slip joint. So
Oh, cool.
I like slip joints. I think they're fun. And Ken Coates he's one of the better ones in the country making them. So if I've got him close and he's willing to teach me, I'd be a fool not to take those lessons. So I'm hoping to enhance that. I've also considered taking some jewelry classes at the tech school too.
Cool.
I have no idea how I would incorporate that, but I think that there are certain skills that or sometimes tools. Sometimes you find out that another industry has a tool and you're like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, that does what?
Yeah.
I've been doing that by hand. It's like, oh, okay, cool. There's a tool for that. So yeah, sometimes it pays to learn, that and learn new skills and new trades.
Oh yeah. Open your eyes to so much that way. So this is going to be, you're going to Blade Show. Is this your first time at Blade Show, or have you gone in the past?
I think 2015 was my first year going with my friend Peter, and I think I got my first table in 2018.
Oh wow!
So,
okay.
Everybody missed 2020, of course, but
Yeah.
I've been there. I've been there every year. I've been at table 2 double D for this will be my 4th year at 2 double D.
I'm wondering if we met, or if I know I must have seen your blades, because I just go back and forth at Blade Show. I look at everything.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if I met you.
Yeah, I'm right up front when you walk in the door and you go to the left. And I was always, do you know Sharky?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was always table mates with him. He was always right behind me.
Oh, cool.
With his bright purple jacket. And I guess I'm getting a new table neighbor this year. But
so what would you recommend? I mean, you're kind of a veteran Blade Show, taking your knives there. What advice do you have for makers who are maybe going there for the first time?
Comfortable shoes, and I guess it's really good to have somebody that can watch your table for you, because otherwise you're going to miss Blade Show. And it's really cool to get to see everybody that comes walking by your table, but you miss a lot of people if you're not able to go out and walk around a little bit too. So have somebody that you trust, whether it be a spouse or a friend or whatever, that can watch your table for a little while so that you can go out and see stuff. So that's I've been in other industries, and there's nothing quite like Blade Show as far as trade shows go.
I love it. I mean, for me, I feel every time I leave Blade Show, which, this will be my 5th year. I feel like, why am I not doing this full time? Why am I not in these are my people? I love just like, and people like to talk about diversity these days, and you go to Blade Show, that's true diversity there. All sorts of different people from all walks of life with that one thing in common, their love of knives. And it's such a good feeling, or it's, as the kids say, such a great vibe, everyone's like, loving it. One thing I have noticed is that knife makers, it might be a very solitary pursuit, but when you get to Blade Show, you have to be ready to press the flesh and just kind of draw people into your table, invite people to pick stuff up.
Yeah. And I'm a good knife maker. I'm a horrible salesman. And that is one of my downfalls. It seems like there's times that somebody will come by and they'll pick up a knife and look at it and they'll go, okay, I'll take that. And I go, really? I'm like shocked. I'm like, wow, cool. And I've sold hundreds and hundreds of knives, but it's still a rush. And there's so many times that you get to meet, if you're selling knives online and you're shipping them to people and stuff, you never get to meet them.
Yeah.
And actually talk to them. And the one thing is that they never look like what you were imagining, they were going to look like. But it's really cool to just be able to put a face with some of the customers. And there's so much going on at Blade Show. It's hard to see everybody, I guess. But
well, I want to ask you one more question before we wrap, but I would like to make a comment on your salesman comment. Like, if you have beautiful knives and you're just a nice dude, you don't need to be like a sales guy, or one doesn't need to be a sales guy. They could just meet you and chat with you. Oh my gosh, I like this guy and I love his knives. And because everyone there is ready to buy knives. That's the beauty of that. In a way, it's just, you just have to bring your personality. And obviously you do, you're an old hat at this. But I always feel kind of badly for the guys who are kind of sitting there quietly. And, I just want to say, get up, like shake some hands and, tell people to pick up your knives and you might be, might have more fun. But I also understand some people just are mortified by crowds. So
yeah, well, one of my drawbacks is I'm getting old and losing my hearing. It's not quite what it used to be, but I'm too stubborn to buy hearing aids. So for a lot of times I sometimes have a hard time hearing people. It works for me. I'm kind of on the end of the row, so I can get out and get on the other side of the table, and talk with people. Something that I did last year. Now, the whole thing is that only knife makers can view this secret. I don't want anybody that buys knives to know what I'm going to tell them right now. But what I started doing last year was every time somebody buys a knife, I get a picture with that person. Holding the knife. And as soon as I get that picture of that person and they walk away, I put what their name was and what they bought and save that to the photo. So now this year on my way down to Atlanta, I'm going to be going through those photos so that I can, when that person walks by, I'm going to know their name and I'm going to know what they bought from me last year. And to them, it's oh my God, this guy remembered me. To me, it's a way for me to try to connect better with the customer, I guess.
That's a really cool idea. I like that. I mean, it means something because people have decided that their hard-earned money, they would rather have your hard-made knife than their hard-earned money, and that means something to both of you. And that's cool for you to learn their name. I think that's
the people that amaze me are the ones that are there on like Monday. Waiting outside. And the last couple of years our hotel room has overlooked the line, and it's just 9:00 at night when I'm ready to go to bed, I'm looking out the window and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe all these people are here just to see me. Of course not, but the enthusiasm of the customers is incredible. It's really unbelievable. And I guess I love knives, but I don't get that enthused about them that I have to be there, waiting 4 days for the doors to open.
All right, let me ask you one last question, and before I let you go, and that is to someone who thinks they want to make knives, a newbie, so to speak. What kind of advice would you give them?
I'm going to give them the advice of use new materials. Don't try to repurpose. Find a local knife maker. There are knife makers all over the place, and there are guilds all over the place. I'm one of the founding members of the Midwest Knifemakers Guild, which is it's a teaching guild. So they've got different classes and different events throughout the year. You're never going to learn as much watching YouTube videos as you are working hands-on side by side with somebody and learning from them. So that's going to be my main advice, I guess.
So cultivate mentorship, basically.
Yeah. And knife makers are an odd breed in that, with the exception of a couple of people, there really are no secrets in this industry. People are very free about sharing knowledge and how they do things. And, if I were to call up, somebody and want to know how they do something on a slip joint or something, they're gonna take the time usually to talk you through it, or send you pictures of how they do it or whatever. So yeah. There's no other hobby that I know of that is as open as knife making.
That's great. And that's a great note to end on. Jess Hoffman of J. Hoffman Knives, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, sir. Take care.
Thanks.
Adventure delivered. Your monthly subscription for hand-picked outdoor, survival, EDC, and other cool gear from our expert team of outdoor professionals. TheKnifeJunkie.com/battlebox.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. Jess Hoffman of J. Hoffman Knives. I look forward to meeting Jess in just a couple of weeks here, and I feel like maybe I have met him along the way on the last table to the left. But I look forward to meeting him and getting some of his knives in hand. Be sure to join us for the Thursday night knives coming up soon. We're going to be giving away a new knife for the Gentleman Junkies, and well, it's always just a pleasure meeting you guys there. But if you do see me at Blade Show and you recognize me, come up and introduce yourself. I would love to meet you in person. All right, for Jim working his magic behind the switcher, I'm Bob DeMarco saying until next time, don't take dull for an answer.
Thanks for listening to the Knife Junkie podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review at reviewthepodcast.com. For show notes for today's episode, additional resources, and to listen to past episodes, visit our website, TheKnifeJunkie.com. You can also watch our latest videos on YouTube at TheKnifeJunkie.com/YouTube. Check out some great knife photos on TheKnifeJunkie.com/Instagram, and join our Facebook group at TheKnifeJunkie.com/Facebook. And if you have a question or comment, email them to bob@TheKnifeJunkie.com or call our 24/7 listener line at 724-466-4487, and you may hear your comment or question answered on an upcoming episode of the Knife Junkie podcast.